question is that this House do now adjourn. Mr Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a great pleasure to speak in tonight's debate on an issue that is extremely important for Barnsley and for the country. In these times of austerity, there is huge pressure on my constituents and huge pressure on the young people in my constituency. This is a tough time to be growing up. Barnsley is a great place to live, to raise a family. It's an exciting place to work, a good location to set up a business, a place to build a life. It's a town with a proud history and what should be a bright future. The young people of Barnsley Central are key to unlocking our town's potential. But prospects for young people are uncertain, and many are concerned that we risk wasting a generation of talent. Mr Speaker, there is no shortage of talent amongst young people in my constituency. I see this in the Barnsley Youth Choir, who will perform a concert later this month alongside the world-famous Hungarian Aurin Choir. I see it at the Carlton Community College, where 4 pupils were recently awarded the prestigious Diana Anti-Bullying Award in recognition of their commitment to tackling anti-bullying issues. And I see it at Holy Trinity School, where I visited on Friday and met some outstanding pupils. I felt privileged to meet Callum Barnes, Alex Haycock, Alexandra Ryan Moss, Callum Mitchell, Jessica Knowles, Eleanor Coles, Lucy Towers and Toriro Monega. I came away inspired by their ambition. And I know from my time in the army that young people can and do the most amazing things. I've seen it firsthand, young people demonstrating outstanding courage, professionalism, dedication and commitment. But the potential that young people possess must be encouraged, cultivated and celebrated. Developing young people's potential does not only ensure that every individual feels valued in society, it ensures that the UK has a bright future. But young people must be given the chance to make this future a reality. And my concern is that the government runs the risk of letting this wealth of potential fall by the wayside by failing to put policies in place that protect young people from the worst effects of the economic crisis. Now, whilst I intend to focus this debate on young people's education and training opportunities, it is important to understand the context of the challenges facing young people at the beginning of their lives. The beginning of a child's life should be filled with hope and happiness. Instead, children and their parents face real financial challenges at an already difficult time. In 2011, the Prime Minister assured the House that the money for Sure Start is there so centres do not have to close. But that budget has been cut by a third, and nationally there are 400 fewer centres compared to May 2011. In my constituency, there has been a significant reduction in funding, with a cut of 6.9 million since 2010. The Prime Minister also promised a major step forward on childcare in the recent budget. In reality, many families are set to lose up to £1,560 a year at a time when wages are stagnating. Mr Speaker, I recently visited Darton College, a brand new BSF school, like all the secondary schools in Barnsley. There I met some hugely talented students who were researching the impact of child poverty. Like me, they were struck by the statistics. 22% of children in Barnsley Central live in poverty, a completely unacceptable figure in this day and age. So children and their parents need all the support we can give them. By supporting them in their early years, we can provide families with a stable emotional and financial platform from which they can get the best possible start in life. Mr Speaker, I would now like to focus this debate directly on education and training opportunities for young people in Barnsley Central. I acknowledge that some of the issues I will raise sit outside of the Minister's brief and are the responsibility of other government departments. Whilst I do not expect the Minister to respond on all these matters, I would like to make it clear that these issues impact upon education and skills policy and are relevant to this debate. Mr. Speaker, everyone deserves the best possible start in life, and equal access to high-quality education should provide this. After all, education is the key to success. Young people have a range of options open to them when they reach further education, from the study of A-levels and BTECs to apprenticeships and other vocational courses. But the government is making it harder, rather than easier, for young people to access further and higher education. The decision to abandon EMA, treble tuition fees and remove the Barnsley-inspired Future Jobs Fund delivers a triple whammy for young people in Barnsley Central hoping to get on the career ladder. Consequently, the number of young people in my constituency in further education is falling. In 2011-12, 8,600 young people from Barnsley Central started a further education course of one kind or another. This was 400 fewer than in 2010-11 and 1,400 fewer than in 2009-2010. And proposed reforms to the way in which A-levels are studied also threaten the future prospects of some of our young people. The restructuring of exams to make assessment linear rather than modular is likely to affect the provision of education and skills needed by young people in later life. I believe we must encourage children to develop skills in school that will enable them to adapt and respond to situations and opportunities they will face in life, not simply a regurgitation of remembered facts for an exam that are quickly forgotten. Surely we should be equipping our young people with a more rounded and flexible education, which will better prepare them for the modern workplace, rather than resorting to the old exam conveyor belt system in attempt to boost league tables.
On that point,
I'm happy to give way.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, last week I visited Newman School, which is a special needs school, and I was really struck with their vigour with which they encourage young people to be empowered, to have a voice and take an active role in society. Would my honourable friend agree that these are also skills that children need?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful for my honourable friend's intervention. It brings me very neatly on to what I was about to say, which echoes the point she has just made, which is the impact of some of the government's proposed reforms on special schools. I have two in my constituency, Greenacre and Springwell, both excellent schools, well led with hugely committed teachers. And I share the concern that my honourable friend has just made, and many others, about the impact of some of the government's reforms on the delivery of education, particularly in the context of assessment and examination in special schools. I'm sure that the Minister will agree that we must do all that we can to support young people with disabilities and with additional needs. Mr. Speaker, the educational opportunities in Barnsley Central open to young people includes an outstanding tertiary college. In the words of Ofsted inspectors, Barnsley College provides an inspirational resource for the Barnsley community and a transformational one for many learners. But in order to create a level playing field for post-16 schools and colleges, then there is, I believe, a need to remove the basic funding differences. One issue that has been debated by members in this House is the entitlement to free school meals in schools and academies that does not extend to colleges. However, another significant difference is that colleges have to pay VAT out of the money they receive for teaching and learning. The principal has informed me that if Barnsley College was treated the same as an academy for VAT, then he would have around £1 million per year more to spend on teaching students. Barnsley College also has a successful programme of encouraging community groups and school-aged children to use their new buildings in the evenings and at weekends. The latest addition to this programme will be additional classes in English and maths held on Saturday mornings. The principal has also informed me that he can't grow this valuable work any further because HMRC regard teaching children in colleges as business use, and he will run the risk of receiving a huge bill if he tries to grow classes or activities for the community beyond the current level. Also, Mr. Speaker, it seems reasonable that parents and politicians should be able to easily compare the performance of post-16 provision in schools and colleges. To enable this to happen, there needs to be a level playing field in the way that the data in the DFA league tables is produced, and ensure that Ofsted applies the same standards and judgments to all post-16 providers, including awarding a clear separate grade at inspection for school and academy sixth forms. Can I ask that the Minister or a colleague of his from the government writes to me specifically about these issues that relate to Barnsley College? Mr. Speaker, when our young people leave school or college, it is of course a time which produces fresh challenges and tough decisions. For those pupils who do opt to go to university, they will face the daunting prospect of high tuition fees. And those young people who feel that they cannot afford to go face missing an opportunity to further their study. The rise in tuition fees has also had a significant impact on the number of people applying to go to university. According to the latest figures from UCAS, university applications are down for a second year running. The figures for students in England show a drop.
It's a very long-established convention in this place that when somebody is making a speech in an adjournment debate, that member is heard with courtesy in silence. I ask the Honourable Lady to observe that convention. If she doesn't feel able to do so, she can leave the chamber. Mr. Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The figure for students in England show a drop of 6.5% from 2012. The Coalition's decision to raise tuition fees has made it even harder for young people, particularly those from less well-off backgrounds, to gain access to higher education. Now, Mr. Speaker, whilst the focus of this debate is on young people, it's important to reflect for a moment on the huge contribution that teachers make to supporting young people. I believe it's a truism to say you never forget a good teacher. And I know that leadership in schools is hugely important. And in my constituency, we've got some great head teachers. Simon Barber at Holy Trinity, Neil Hutchinson at Carlton Community College, Dave Whittaker at Springwell, Sue Hayter at Greenacre, Sharon Rosides at Darton College, and Nick Bowen at Horizon, just over the boundary in the neighbouring constituency, and Colin Booth, the principal of Barnsley College. And I've also been inspired by many other teachers that I've met. Matt Wright, Phil Evans, Catherine Smith, Leanne Crowther, Sharon Stacey, Steve Idale, Kate Davis, Vicky Bruff, Eleanor Wright, and many, many more. But the truth of the matter is that many, if not most teachers, feel undervalued. Many have told me how low morale is, and many have shared with me that they struggle to sleep at night because of the pressure of the job. Mr. Speaker, I recently received a letter from a maths teacher. He told me that over half of his colleagues had considered leaving the profession last year. He said the attacks on pay, pensions and conditions of service are without precedent. I feel angry, I feel undervalued, and as though I am the scapegoat for the ills of society. What can the Minister say to him and the countless thousands of others in the teaching profession who feel like that? Will the Minister come to Barnsley to meet with teachers and to discuss these matters and education more generally? Mr. Speaker, I now want briefly to say something about apprenticeships and other vocational routes. For too long, people have focused on the 50% that go to university. Now it's time to also focus on the other 50%, the forgotten 50%. For too long, politicians have viewed vocational and academic education in silos, leading to a focus on the latter at the expense of the quality and the status of the former. Approaching further education as a whole will allow the benefits of both forms of learning to be experienced by a greater number of young people, offering a broader and richer education better suited to the needs and the challenges of a modern economy. Because today's apprentices face very different challenges. Many young people can expect to go through several career changes in their lifetime, requiring them to possess a more flexible and adaptable skill set. These new challenges demand a coordinated and hands-on approach from government as well as from figures in the business and education sectors.
Can my honourable friend give way?
I'm happy to give way to him.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, because does he also agree with me that the whole downgrading of careers advice given to young people has actually contributed to some of that difficulty of young people knowing which is the best route for them and encourage them either to stay on or to take apprentices, and that lack of good careers guidance is really detrimental to their future prosperity and health.
Thank you, Mr. I'm grateful for that intervention. I completely agree with my honourable friend. The decision that young people make about their future career destination is an incredibly important one, and I think it really makes such a difference if they're able to receive helpful, useful careers advice in the context of other advice that they receive from schools. I just want to finish, Mr. Speaker, my point about apprenticeships. I was about to make the point that the vast bulk of additional apprenticeship places created by the government have come in the post-25 age range, with an increase of some 367%. But the latest figures also show that 69,600 16 to 18-year-olds started an apprenticeship in 2012-13, in comparison to 79,100 the previous year, a drop of over 12%. Those in the 16 to 25 category risk being left behind. So our country and the town that I'm proud to represent is clearly in need of fresh initiatives aimed at addressing youth unemployment, and it is my constituency which is helping to lead the way in the fight against youth unemployment. Yes, I will give way.
One of the initiatives that it could be used is to introduce more young women to engineering apprenticeships, because that's one of the markets that is waiting to be developed.
I absolutely do agree, but I would, because time is now running short, like to take the opportunity to briefly mention an initiative in my constituency. The Minister may recall that I've written to him about this. It's the Barnsley Apprenticeship Pledge. It's a pilot scheme pioneered by Barnsley College, which is working in partnership with 9 of Barnsley's major public and private sector employees to ensure that 2.5% of their workforce are apprentices. Not only do schemes like the pledge provide skills for young people, they also provide businesses with the opportunity to expand and tailor a workforce which meets its needs. Mr. Speaker, finally, I would like to very briefly touch upon the issue of youth unemployment. Despite the recent figures which show that overall unemployment is going down, the job market for young people is still extremely difficult. Youth unemployment continues to climb, with the number of NEETs growing. According to the latest figures for my constituency, the number of people claiming job seekers allowance is still higher than in May 2010, at 7.4%. And with 900 JSA claimants aged 18 to 24, youth unemployment continues to remain a serious problem in Barnsley, a figure up from this point in 2011. The government's answer to youth unemployment was to introduce the youth contract, aimed at providing training and skills. However, the youth contract has largely been ineffective and has failed to significantly gain employers willing to support the scheme. Fewer than 6,000 young people have been helped into permanent jobs. That's just 3.4% of young people on the work programme. Those left behind are often people who are desperate for work, who want to earn a living, get on the housing ladder, start families and contribute to our town, but there simply aren't the jobs available. Mr. Speaker, this is a tough time to be growing up. There are real and genuine concerns about making sure young people get the right education, training, apprenticeships and academic opportunities. My concern is that we are running the risk that the talents of thousands of our young people are going to waste. That is why we must talk up the importance of raising aspirations among young people. Research shows that low aspiration are related to poor academic attainment and professional achievement, an all too common trend in times of austerity. So we must make sure that we take every single opportunity to encourage, inspire, persuade, cajole where necessary the young people of our constituencies to get on and realise their ambitions, their hopes and their dreams. I therefore urge the Minister and his government to do all that they can to support the young people in my constituency and across our country in order for them to get the best possible start in life. After all, they are the future of the country. Thank you.
I call the Minister, Matthew Hancock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's a great pleasure to respond to this debate, not least because, as the Honourable Member for Barnsley said, the beginning of life is full of hope, and I agree with him very strongly about the need and the benefit of aspiration, which he talked about at the end, and the duty incumbent on all of us to encourage and strengthen aspiration and support those who need nurturing, as well as encouraging and challenging those who are ready to rise to that challenge. And I agreed with much of what he said, and there's a few points where I'd like to bring him up to speed with some of the developments that, that have taken place, that maybe in the spirit of supporting Barnsley, he can help me and help the government in going out and explaining to his constituents, because there are offers that can support the very ambitions and the goals that he talks about. There is undoubtedly a challenge across the country of youth unemployment. Youth unemployment has risen for far too long. It started its slow and sclerotic rise in 2004, and thankfully now is falling. In Barnsley, youth unemployment is 210 lower than a year ago, and as he said, there are 900 people aged 18 to 24 unemployed in Barnsley. This is thankfully the lowest figure in the last 5 years. It's falling year on year, and it is moving in the right direction, but undoubtedly 900 young unemployed people is 900 too many. But make no mistake, we are focusing foursquare on dealing with the problem, as he is urging us to do. He mentioned the youth contract. It's true that the youth contract has helped around 6,000 people in Barnsley, and given that youth unemployment is now 900, that is a pretty good ratio. He also mentioned apprenticeships, and the 75% increase in apprenticeships over the last 2 years to over 1,300 is very good, and I pay tribute to Barnsley College. I pay tribute not only because, in his words, they are an outstanding FE college, and they do a huge amount of work that is for Barnsley and for the whole community, but also their success rate in apprenticeships is 96%, above the 74% national success rate. So they are outstanding in Ofsted grade, but they're outstanding in results too. The town of Barnsley also has the benefit of, I would say, representation here of a strong advocate, and there are areas of agreement between us. The first area is the need for more employer engagement in education, preparing young people not just for an academic future, important as that is, but also for a life in work, to understand what work is, to understand not only the benefits of it, but how to engage in it. And it's a crucial matter for social mobility that we support everybody to understand what it takes to get a good job, to hold down a job or an apprenticeship. I also, of course, agree with him on the need to support the disabled people in Barnsley and across the country, and those with additional learning needs. And he mentioned removing funding disparities. I agree very strongly with him about removing funding disparities. The funding reforms that we've put through for those aged 16 to 19, which come into force this September, take away a system that was in place over the last 10 years or so, in which funding was applied per qualification. And this meant that those who took a lot of qualifications, who happen also to tend to be the best educated, ended up getting funded more for their education in the age of 16 to 19, and those who tended to do fewer qualifications got less funding. So full-time people in full-time education who were doing, say, 1 or 2 BTECs, equivalent to if they're equivalent in size to 1 or 2 A-levels, would be funded at about half the rate of a very bright pupil doing 5 A-levels. I think that's wrong, and we've changed that so that in future every pupil will be funded on the same formula with the same basic rate, and then adjustments so that those with disadvantaged backgrounds will have slightly more, and there's other alterations for those taking particularly expensive courses. But the fundamental point is that we fund per pupil at the age of 16 to 19, and I hope that he supports that change. He mentioned the issue of VAT and free school meals, on both of which I recognise. On free school meals, we need to be careful what we wish for, because schools have a duty to provide free school meals to sixth formers, but they don't get funded for it. And if colleges ask for the duty and we were to be fair and have a level playing field, we'd give them the duty without then giving them the funding for it. And I'm not sure that that's exactly what he's calling for. We do give a bursary to support those who need additional support, including for school meals, to the most disadvantaged 16 to 19-year-olds, including some in Barnsley. It was interesting what he said about Saturday morning lessons in English and maths. I agree very strongly with him that English and maths are crucial, and all the evidence shows that they are essentially the two most important vocational skills that there are, as well as being academic skills. What he said about Ofsted, I'll look into and see what the circumstances were around that. Of course, Ofsted are independent. And the other area I agreed with him very strongly was on the importance of data and the league tables, and the need for the league tables, again, to have a level playing field, showing not only exam results in an equal way for different types of provider, but also the different destinations that people go to, because exams are important, but exams are a means to an end. It's about what proportion of people get into an apprenticeship, what proportion go to university, how many get into work, and how many go on to other further study. And we are committed to bringing that richer, more detailed destination data into the public domain, and I hope that he welcomes that. There's some areas where I think that we don't have a disagreement of purpose, but we do have a disagreement of in terms of what the government's doing. I agree with him about the importance of the early years and everybody getting a good start in life. Indeed, the government is bringing in the 2-year-old offer, extending down the age range for the most disadvantaged 2-year-olds to make sure that they have support to help ensure that they get a good start. I agree with him about this phrase, the forgotten 50%, which we hear almost as an apology on the lips of some Labour members. I tell you, they're not forgotten to us. The introduction and strengthening and development of the apprenticeship proposal is absolutely vital in ensuring that everybody gets a good start. We've made clear that we want to see a new norm in this country, that young people, when they're leaving school, either go, by their choice, to a university or into an apprenticeship. And that our job in government is to make sure that high-quality offers for each are available, and higher apprenticeships in particular, showing that if you go into an apprenticeship, you can progress all the way through. And I heard at the weekend again the Labour Shadow Secretary saying that he agreed with the 50% target of university, but that unwittingly pushes people into the wrong choice for them. And on this point, finally, on linear rather than not modular exams, I would say this. I entirely agree with him about education not being just about a conveyor belt of exams, but modular exams are more of a conveyor belt. We've seen last summer the difficulties a modular system can get our education system into. And linear exams are about precisely testing people about what they've achieved at the end of their studies, rather than constantly asking them to learn for another exam and learn information just so long as they can get through the exam and get through the module. Instead, it's about imbuing people with a deeper sense of what that knowledge is conveying. And the drive for rigour, the drive for reform in our education system is something that progressive members on all sides of this House ought to support. They ought to support it whether there's tight budgets or not, and whatever the reasons for those tight budgets are. And I hope that he will, in looking at the answers that I've given, the apprenticeship programme, the new traineeship programme coming in August, and the increasing standards we're driving through schools and through colleges in Barnsley and across the country, will reflect to his constituents not only that things are tough, yes, but getting better, and that there's a great offer from a government that is determined to support young people and ensure that youth unemployment gets better, gets lower every year.
The question is that this House do now adjourn.